Hi everybody, it's Pat Gillis here, and as you know, last week we lost a really special horse by the name of Grandpa, and I have to be honest, I was pretty touched by how many former students and people who had known him wrote some just lovely things about him on our Facebook page, which was really, really nice. Um, and I thank you so much for that. I also want to thank the person who private messaged me asking, if I had any insider advice as to how to know when it's time. And I mean, the question was asked so earnestly that I feel like I couldn't just sort of say, well, it depends. I felt like I had to give it a lot more thought than that. So, like many years ago at the farm, we had this lovely little chestnut thoroughbred, and his name was Robbie. And Robbie was just a playful little guy and a really, really cute little horse. And one day we were about to bring the horses in. It was the end of the day, and we went up to the south field to get him. And when I got there, I found Robbie was standing on 3 legs. He'd shattered his pastern, broken his leg, essentially. And so this was, well before there were cell phones or anything like that. So I had to run back to the barn and get into the office and call the vet, and I told him the situation, and he promised he would get to the farm as quickly as he could. And in hindsight, I mean, he must have broken every posted speed limit there was, and gosh, he practically must have broken the sound barrier. He got here so fast, but at the time, in the moment, it felt like an eternity. And we're just all standing around and trying to do our best for poor Robbie, and all I kept thinking was, please just get here, please just get here. And I mean, I would have paid $1 million just to have his truck pull into the driveway so that he could relieve and finally end poor Robbie's suffering. It was a terrible day. And another time, my old horse, he was my first horse actually, Chucky, it was a fall day, and he was rolling in the mud, which Chucky loved to do that, and he got down in the mud, and he wasn't able to get back up. And luckily there was a bunch of us here, so we were able to help him. So we got him up out of the mud. But boy, it got me thinking, and I started thinking, what would have happened if it was in the middle of winter, and maybe he laid down on the ice and he couldn't get up, or we didn't even know. Maybe he would do it in the morning, and we wouldn't know till the end of the day. And the weakness that Chucky was starting to experience, it wasn't going to be fixed with time. In actual fact, it was time that was working against Chucky, because he was 35 years old. And so I just decided I had to make a really, really tough decision. And so I called the vet to arrange to have him put to sleep before the really, really cold weather came. And I remember, I guess it was probably, I don't know, a couple of days after I called that the appointment was scheduled for, and those were the 2 most heart-wrenching, wretched days while I waited for this appointment to be met. And I remember that day going out to get Chucky in the field, and I just kept hoping that, that the vet would be late so that I could have a little bit more time with him. And I was just filled with dread for that moment when I would see the truck pull in the driveway. And I'm telling you all this because at Harrogate, all of my school horses, they retire at the farm. And so after 35 years, we've come up against this decision a lot of times. They don't get sold on, they retire here, and they end their life with us here. And we've had to make that decision a lot of times. William Shakespeare once said, what is it? Better 3 hours early than a second too late. And that is so, so true. All of us who have horses or animals of any kind at some point probably are going to have to make these kinds of decisions, and they're always tough. So I would suggest to you, consult with your vet. Ask yourself, is your horse still enjoying his life? Is he eating well? Are you able to manage his pain? And maybe the toughest question to ask yourself is, are you just hanging on because you can't bear to let go? And it's not selfish, right? It's because we love them so much that we have trouble in that moment to let them go. So for what it's worth, here's the guideline that I use. If I have to make the decision to put a horse down, and that decision is instantaneous, it's easy to make, I can barely wait, I'm just hoping that the decision will be, or the process will take place as soon as possible, then I know that was a pretty tough time for my horse. If, on the other hand, I make a decision to put a horse down and it just tears me up inside and I'm dreading it and dreading it and dreading it, and I feel sick to my stomach, which I still do even after all these years, then I know it was probably pretty good for my horse. In the final analysis, I mean, whatever decision we make, we have to make it with love and with respect for our horses, or all of our animals. You know, I guess we have to even say to ourselves that we have to recognize that horses and all animals are like a gift, and we just have to hope and pray, I guess, that when the time comes, we have the strength and the courage to give them back. Thanks. Talk to you next week.